Now that you have an idea regarding the process of developing a manuscript to be submitted to a journal paper, the next question it will be, which journals publishers that you should go for? In fact, there are quite a number of journals available in the market, which you can find them from the internet. There are lots of them. However, there are some considerations. You will need to choose those journals paper which is known to be professional and ethical within the academic communities. There are a lot of good journals publisher, and there are a lot of journals publisher which is rather questionable. You may search through the internet to gain better ideas regarding the journals, checking their websites, looking for the opinions and reviews from the research community. You may also check for some website giving you an idea regarding the quality of those journals. You know that journals publisher is like people, because there are peoples managing those. Some are managing it professionally, while some are managing it for other interests. You need to be careful for that. Those journals which are professionally managed, you can see from their outputs and the impact factors. You will observe a lot of researchers would like to have their papers to be published there, and the chances of getting the papers accepted, it will be rather slim. There will be chances of rejection, and you will find yourself need to improve the quality of your paper before being considered acceptance. If you could go to this kind of journals, it will be a very good learning process to you, and also your papers gain better accessibility. More people will read through your journal, and you feel proud of yourself getting your research being recognized by good journals. There are also journals which are not properly managed. Some may for the interest of earning money, which you might need to pay for a huge sum of money without even considering the quality of your paper. Some of the journals you never encountered before, you have never dealt with those journals, you do not know whether the journals is properly managed. One way for you to cross-check that is to find the published articles in their archives. Normally they have those in their website. Then you can download a few journals to have a look in terms of the qualities of the journals. Whether the quality is extremely poor or whether the quality is very good. Of course, you would like to submit for the journals that based on their historical record, the quality of the papers are rather good. In fact, sometimes you may feel lacking of confidence. As a postgraduate student, you need to fulfill a requirement to have at least 1 or 2 papers being published before you submitting for your thesis. Now you are in the deadline, so eager to have your papers to be at least accepted by any of the journals. You may also flick through the previously published articles by the journals to have a quick access in terms of the quality of the paper. Normally you can have an initial idea, the level or the quality of your paper against those which have been published and accepted by that respective journals. Then you find a quality which is more or less similar to yours. This will slightly increase your chance to be accepted. And this is provided that those journals are proper journals, really go through the proper reviewing process, as you would like to take this opportunity to learn and get yourself prepared for the evaluations of your thesis as well as your viva presentations. There are also some journals do not really care about the researchers who submit the manuscript. Some may not be responding to you, holding your papers for more than 1 year, without acknowledging the state of your journal's paper, whether they are still at the editor side or has already been forwarded to the reviewer for the reviewing process, or whether the reviewer has done the reviewing process, going back to the editor to decide whether to proceed with your publications of your papers. Some journals even you send several emails to follow up the status of your papers. No response was given, and your papers is being stuck there for a long period of time. To me, this is quite unfair to the authors who have submitted their journals, because it is ethical for us submitting for a journals that the paper must not concurrently submitted to another journals. That means you cannot have the same paper submitted to 2 different journals, because you're not sure whether the journals is in the pipeline. You can only go for another journal after confirmed rejections of your paper, or after you have officially withdrawn your paper. You cannot submit the same papers to 2 journals. Therefore, for this kind of journals paper who do not actually properly respond the authors and holding the papers for more than 1 year without any confirmations whether to accept or to reject, it is rather unfair to the authors. By all means, if you encounter this kind of journals, I will make sure myself forever never submit to this kind of journals, as this will prolong the durations for you to get your paper published. And based on my experience, for the journals which is holding the paper for more than 1 year, the chances of your papers being published is rather low. It seems that they are not interested, or the quality of your papers really not meeting their requirement, and they don't want to bother that. At least based on my personal experience, for the papers being held more than 1 year without proper response, sending several emails to check the status, no response also, and normally this will end up the papers being rejected and you lose your time, which is not worth waiting. You may consider to withdraw your paper, officially notifies to the editors on the withdrawal of your papers. And you will need to seek confirmations until your papers are officially rejected. Then you can go for another journals. Of course, there are some good journals. They have their own SOP, which is made transparent to the authors. How long will it take for the reviewer to receive your manuscript? How long will be given to the reviewer to come up with the review report? And how long will the editor require to decide the acceptance or rejection of your papers? And based on the timeline given by those journals, you have an idea when you should follow up your journal's paper if you do not receive any updates from that particular journals. Personally, I prefer these kinds of journals which have been quite professionally managed, and I know the status of my papers, keeping me constantly updated. And in future, if I have some good papers to be published, I would like to try those journals papers. It is worth to know that there are a lot of good journals in the industry. There are a group of journals with extremely high requirement and standards, which if you are able to publish in any of those papers, it will be a great asset to you. You will feel very proud knowing that your research is of good quality and the quality of your papers is good. How do you know this kind of journals? You can actually go and search from the internet regarding the ratings of those journals. There are a series of the rating criteria, such as the H index, the Q1, Q2, Q3, the impact factors, the citation rates, and so on and so forth. This is one of the websites that you can use to check those. You can use the filtering functions for you to filter the field which is relevant to you. And then there will be some rating in the mode of Q1, Q2, Q3 and Q4. In fact, to me, as long as the journals have acquired at least Q4, that means Q4, Q3, Q2, Q1, it is already good enough. You really need to produce good papers to be accepted by those journals. Q1 represents the group of journal of the highest quality, or the proper term it will be of the highest prestige. More people would like to try that. They have better options and better bargaining power. Then they're going to choose the best out of the limited numbers of acceptance. You're going to expect those with the Q1 paper as really high levels of rejection, but it is worth to try. Some people may recommend you to try Q1, and if rejected, try Q2, and then if rejected, go for Q3, and so on and so forth. That one is depending on the personal strategy and also depending on the amount of time that you have. Do you have a deadline to get your papers to be published? It is always good for you to go and try for those which is really good, to have an assessment whether you are up to the standard or not. And you're going to receive a lot of critical comment from those reviewers who are really experienced in your field of study. Don't be disheartened when your papers is being rejected, as the chances of acceptance is relatively low. The meaning of Q1 is referring to the top 75% to 100% among the group of journals being evaluated or being considered. That means you're looking at the A+ journals, which is expecting the A+ quality. And there is another thing that you need to know. Sometimes getting your papers to be published, it will be very much dependent on who is the reviewer. Normally there will be 2 to 3 reviewers for one manuscript, and it is based on the recommendations of the reviewer. The editor decide whether to accept or to reject the paper. Sometimes you encounter extremely strict reviewer who strongly against the publication of your paper. Sometimes you encounter the reviewer who would recommend for the acceptance of your papers. In order to reduce the bias, normally the journals will assign 2 to 3 reviewers and look into their comments. It will be based on the consistency in terms of the recommendations given by the reviewer for the editors to decide whether to accept or to reject the paper. Another thing you need to know about this Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. Normally we have perceptions that Q1 papers is always the hardest and the Q4 papers is always the easiest to be published. But you will see there are cases where your papers being rejected by the Q4 but being accepted by the Q1. Sometimes we cannot say that Q4 papers is not as good as Q1. It is just a rating system based on some measurable criteria in terms of the levels of acceptance, accessibility, as well as the impacts to the research community. They rate those as a Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. I would say that if you have any of the journals with Q1 to Q4, they are already quite good enough. Getting them to be published in any of those is already challenging enough for you. Therefore, as a postgraduate student, you can try, but in the case that being rejected, don't be disheartened. You learn through the process.